What if the countdown to midnight on New Year's Eve isn't just a celebration of a calendar flip, but an echo of humanity's oldest ritual, a sacred threshold where the cosmos itself pauses to exhale? Every December 31st, millions gather to watch clocks strike 12, believing they're celebrating a modern tradition, a social convention born from champagne companies and fireworks manufacturers. But beneath the glitter and noise lies something far more ancient, far more profound. The turning of the year isn't an invention of civilization, it's a recognition of something the universe has been doing since time began. Cycles. Everything in existence moves in cycles. The Earth orbits the Sun in an ellipse, not a circle, spiraling through space while simultaneously spinning on its axis. The Moon waxes and wanes in perpetual rhythm. Galaxies rotate, seasons shift, and somewhere deep in the human soul, we've always known that we too are part of this cosmic spiral. Ancient cultures didn't mark the new year on January 1st because of a pope's decree in 1582. They marked it at the winter solstice, at the spring equinox, at harvest moons, whenever the natural world signaled a completion and a beginning. The Babylonians celebrated Akitu for 11 days during the spring equinox 4,000 years ago. The Celts honored Samhain as their new year when the veil between worlds grew thin. The Chinese have tracked lunar cycles for millennia, their new year a movable feast tied to the second new moon after winter solstice. These weren't arbitrary choices. They were alignments with cosmic rhythms, recognitions that time isn't linear, its cyclical spiral alive. First, we'll uncover why the New Year ritual is actually one of humanity's most universal spiritual practices, hidden in plain sight. Then we'll explore the 4 energetic seasons within your own consciousness and how aligning with them transforms mere resolutions into genuine evolution. And finally, we'll decode the ancient practices of release and intention that don't just set goals, but actually weave the fabric of your coming year. So if every ending is simultaneously a beginning, and every beginning contains the seed of its own transformation, then what does it mean to stand consciously at this threshold as 2026 begins? Think of the Earth's journey around the Sun, not as a circle that closes and repeats identically, but as a spiral that ascends. Each orbit brings the planet back to a similar position relative to the Sun, yes, but the entire solar system is simultaneously hurtling through the Milky Way at 514,000 miles per hour. You never occupy the same point in space twice. You return to similar patterns, similar seasons, similar challenges, but always from a slightly elevated perspective. This is the geometry of evolution hidden in plain sight. The conventional view of New Year's resolutions treats time as if it were a flat line with arbitrary markers. January 1st becomes a random point where we're supposed to suddenly become different people, armed with nothing but willpower and a gym membership. By February, the statistics are brutal. Over 80% of resolutions fail. But what if the failure isn't in your discipline? What if it's in the fundamental misunderstanding of how transformation actually works? Linear goal setting assumes you can muscle your way from point A to point B through sheer force of will. It ignores the natural rhythms of your energy, the seasons of your inner life, the cosmic tides that are either supporting or resisting your efforts. Ancient wisdom traditions never made this mistake. The Vedic concept of Rita describes a cosmic order, a natural law that governs both the movement of planets and the unfolding of human consciousness. The Taoists spoke of Wu Wei, effortless action that flows with the current rather than against it. The Stoics understood Logos, the rational principle organizing the universe. Different words, same recognition. There's an intelligence woven into the structure of existence, and aligning with it is far more powerful than fighting against it. You've experienced this, haven't you? Those moments when everything flows, when opportunities appear at exactly the right time, when a decision that seemed difficult suddenly becomes obvious. That's not luck. That's resonance with a cycle that was already in motion, and you've experienced the opposite too, pushing and struggling and forcing, only to watch your efforts crumble like sandcastles against an incoming tide. Same amount of effort, radically different results. The difference? Timing. Alignment. Cyclical awareness. What if every ancient tradition that spoke of honoring transitions, celebrating thresholds, and performing year-end rituals wasn't engaging in superstition, but in sophisticated consciousness technology? What if they understood something we've forgotten? That the turning of the year is an energetic event, not just a calendrical one, and that how you navigate this transition literally shapes the trajectory of your spiral for the next orbit. The new year isn't a reset button that wipes the slate clean. It's a turning point on a spiral staircase. You're returning to familiar territory, new goals, fresh intentions, the desire for change, but you're doing so with everything you've learned, carrying the accumulated wisdom of every previous cycle. This is why the same challenges often reappear year after year, not because you're failing, but because you're being given another opportunity to master them from a higher vantage point. This isn't just philosophy dressed up as inspiration. There are specific markers in your daily experience, observable signs in the way energy moves through your life that reveal when you're in alignment with these natural cycles and when you're fighting against them. The ancients codified these markers. They created practices, and those practices worked not because of mystical thinking, but because they tapped into something real, something measurable, something you can feel in your body and observe in your results. Let's decode what they knew. The ancient mystery schools taught their initiates a fundamental truth. Before you can create anything new, you must first make space for it. This wasn't abstract philosophy. It was practical instruction based on observing how nature operates. A tree cannot grow new leaves in spring if it clings to dead ones from autumn. The moon cannot wax without first waning. Your lungs cannot inhale without first exhaling. Creation and destruction aren't opposites. They're dance partners in an eternal waltz. This is why virtually every culture on Earth developed year-end rituals of release before performing rituals of intention. The Romans celebrated Saturnalia in late December, a festival where normal social order was temporarily inverted, allowing the release of accumulated tensions. The Japanese practice osoji, a deep cleaning of homes and temples before New Year's Day, understanding that physical clearing creates energetic clearing. The Scots observe Hogmanay with first footing, symbolically leaving the old year behind by being the first to cross a threshold into the new. These aren't quaint traditions. They're technologies of consciousness. The modern resolution maker skips this step entirely. On January 1st, they pile new goals onto an already cluttered foundation. Unprocessed disappointments from the previous year, relationships that drained them, projects that failed, versions of themselves they're ashamed of. Then they wonder why their resolutions collapse under the weight. You cannot build a cathedral on quicksand. You cannot plant a garden in soil choked with roots from dead vegetation. Here's the practice ancient wisdom offers. Dedicate the final days of December to conscious release. This isn't about dwelling in negativity or cataloging failures. It's about honest acknowledgement, followed by intentional letting go. Write down what 2025 taught you through difficulty. Name the relationships that no longer serve mutual growth. Identify the habits that kept you small. Acknowledge the fears that held you back. Don't judge them, thank them. Every limitation you carried served a purpose once, even if that purpose was simply to show you what you don't want anymore. The Aztecs understood this so deeply, they built it into their cosmology. They believed the world had been created and destroyed 4 times before, each destruction necessary for the next, greater world to emerge. They weren't being pessimistic, they were being realistic about the nature of transformation. The you who enters 2026 cannot be the same you who lived through 2025. Something must die for something new to be born. The question is whether you'll consciously choose what dies, or whether life will choose for you. Now here's what makes this practice powerful rather than merely therapeutic. The release creates what physicists might call a vacuum state, a space of potential energy. Nature abhors a vacuum. When you consciously clear space in your life, in your mind, in your emotional body, the universe rushes to fill it. But here's the crucial part. You get to influence what fills that space through the second half of the ancient practice, intention. The way ancient cultures understood intention was radically different from how we use the word today. Modern intention often means wishful thinking with good vibes attached. Ancient intention was more like activating a seed that already contains the blueprint of the tree. The Egyptians spoke of heka, creative speech that brings things into being. The Hindus developed mantra, precise vibrational formulas for manifesting specific realities. The indigenous peoples of the Americas understood that ceremony doesn't ask the universe for favors. It aligns your frequency with possibilities that already exist in the field of potential. You've been taught to set goals by visualizing outcomes. The perfect body, the dream job, the ideal relationship. But visualization alone is surface-level intention. It's imagining the fruit without understanding the tree. the seasons, the soil. Deep intention works differently. It asks, what qualities of being do I need to cultivate for this reality to emerge naturally? If you want vibrant health, the intention isn't lose 20 pounds. The intention is, I am becoming someone whose natural state is vitality. Feel the difference? One is a destination you're trying to force. The other is an identity you're growing into, a spiral you're ascending. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't being poetically abstract. He was describing the spiral nature of growth. Every obstacle you'll face in 2026 isn't blocking your path. It's revealing the exact quality you need to develop next. When you set intentions from this understanding, you're not creating a rigid plan that reality will inevitably disrupt. You're declaring a direction and trusting the spiral to teach you what you need to learn along the way. Here's where cyclical consciousness becomes practical magic. Instead of one massive resolution on January 1st that's doomed to fail by February, you divide your year into seasons, each with its own energy and purpose. This isn't arbitrary. It's based on how energy actually moves through natural systems, including the system of your own consciousness. Think of your year as having 4 inner seasons, regardless of what the weather outside your window is doing. The first quarter, roughly January through March, is your inner spring. This is when energy naturally wants to burst forth, when new projects feel exciting, when your motivation is highest. Ancient farmers didn't plant seeds in autumn. They planted in spring because that's when life force is rising. Your intentions set at New Year's gain maximum momentum during these months if you work with the energy rather than against it. But here's what no one tells you. Spring energy doesn't last forever, and it's not supposed to. By April and May, you enter what we might call early inner summer. The initial excitement fades. The new gym routine isn't new anymore. The creative project requires actual discipline now, not just enthusiasm. This is where most resolutions die, because people mistake the natural shift in energy for failure. They think something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. Summer energy is about cultivation, about steady tending, about showing up even when it's not thrilling. The ancient Greeks had a word for this, ponos, the labor that excellence requires. Not suffering, but committed effort. Mid-year, June through August, brings full inner summer. This is peak manifestation energy, when the seeds you planted in spring and tended in early summer begin to show visible results. But it's also the season of highest demand. Your energy is being pulled in multiple directions. Projects require maintenance. Relationships need attention. This is when burnout happens if you haven't built rest into your cycle. Ancient agricultural societies understood this instinctively. Even in the height of summer, they observed Sabbaths, feast days, moments of pause. Not because they were lazy, but because sustainable productivity requires rhythm, not constant output. Then comes autumn, September through November, your inner harvest. This is the season for reaping what you've sown, for evaluation, for honest assessment. What worked? What didn't? What needs to be carried forward and what needs to be composted back into the soil of your experience? The Celts marked Samhain at the end of October as their new year precisely because harvest reveals truth. You can't lie about what grew and what didn't when the fields are bare. This season isn't about starting new things. It's about integrating what the previous seasons taught you. Finally, winter arrives, December and the very beginning of January. Your inner winter. This is the season everyone tries to skip in modern culture. We're told to be productive year-round, to maintain peak energy constantly, to never slow down. But nature doesn't work that way. Trees don't apologize for losing their leaves. Bears don't feel guilty for hibernating. Winter is when life goes underground, when energy consolidates, when the next cycle is being prepared in invisible ways. The most powerful thing you can do in late December isn't to create an elaborate action plan for January. It's to rest, reflect, release, and plant your intentions like seeds in dark soil, trusting that spring will come again. When you understand these inner seasons, New Year's resolutions transform from arbitrary impositions of will into conscious alignment with natural rhythms. You're not trying to be a different person overnight. You're recognizing where you are in your current cycle and asking, what does this season require of me? What's trying to emerge? What's ready to fall away? The ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei, often mistranslated as non-action, actually means something closer to effortless action. or action in harmony with the way things naturally flow. A surfer doesn't create the wave, they align with it. A sailor doesn't create the wind, they adjust their sails to catch it. You don't create the cycles of your life, you learn to recognize them and move with them rather than against them. This is the difference between exhausting yourself through constant resistance and experiencing what the mystics called grace, the sense that life is supporting your unfoldment. But there's another layer. Your personal inner seasons don't necessarily align with the calendar seasons, and this is where self-knowledge becomes crucial. Some people naturally have their highest energy and creativity in autumn and winter. Some people's breakthrough moments come in summer. Some people cycle through seasons in weeks rather than months. The practice here isn't to force yourself into a predetermined pattern. It's to observe your own rhythms with curiosity and honesty. When does your energy naturally rise? When do you need more rest? When are you most open to new experiences? And when do you need to consolidate what you've learned? Ancient wisdom traditions were obsessed with self-knowledge for this exact reason. The oracle at Delphi bore the inscription, "Know thyself," not because self-knowledge is navel-gazing, but because you cannot align with natural cycles if you don't understand your own nature. The Vedic tradition developed elaborate systems of doshas and gunas to help individuals understand their constitutional type. Traditional Chinese medicine mapped meridians and organ systems to seasons and times of day. Astrology, in its original form before pop culture diluted it, was an attempt to understand how cosmic cycles affected individual temperaments. These systems weren't superstition, they were early attempts at personalized rhythm mapping. Here's a practice you can implement immediately. For the next year, keep a simple energy journal. Each day, rate your energy level from 1 to 10. Note when you felt most creative, most motivated, most resistant, most tired. Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll notice you're not the same person every day. Some days you're spring, some days you're winter. When you recognize the pattern, you can stop fighting yourself. On winter days, you rest and plan. On spring days, you launch and create. On summer days, you execute and produce. On autumn days, you harvest and evaluate. You become fluid rather than rigid, responsive rather than reactive. This brings us to perhaps the most powerful aspect of cyclical consciousness, the understanding that every ending contains the seed of a new beginning, and every beginning contains the seed of its own transformation. The Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail, wasn't depicting futility. It was depicting the eternal return, the spiral of becoming. You never step into the same river twice because both you and the river have changed. You never return to exactly the same point because the spiral has lifted you higher. When December 31st arrives and you stand at the threshold of 2026, you're not leaving 2025 behind in some absolute sense. You're carrying forward everything it taught you, every lesson it offered, every way it shaped you. The failures, they're data. The successes, they're confirmation that you're capable. The pain, it's the resistance training that made you stronger. The joy, it's the proof that alignment is possible. Nothing is wasted in a cyclical worldview. Everything is composted into fertilizer for the next season's growth. The Hermetic tradition, one of the oldest Western esoteric schools, taught 7 principles of universal law. The first was the principle of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. The fifth was the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall. These weren't meant to be memorized as doctrine, they were meant to be lived as practice. Your consciousness creates your experience, and your consciousness moves in rhythms. When you align your creative power with natural rhythms, you stop exhausting yourself through resistance and start flowing with the current of your own becoming. So as 2026 approaches, the question isn't what do I want to achieve? The question is, who am I becoming and how can I align with the natural cycles that support this becoming? This shift in question changes everything. Achievement is external, fragile, dependent on circumstances you can't always control. Becoming is internal, resilient, unfolding according to its own organic timing. You can fail to achieve a goal and still be growing in exactly the direction you need to grow. You can achieve every goal on your list and still feel empty if those achievements aren't aligned with your authentic unfoldment. The mystics and sages who developed these practices thousands of years ago weren't more spiritual than you. They were simply more attentive to patterns. They watched the sky, the seasons, the cycles of the moon, and they recognized these same patterns in human consciousness. They understood that the macrocosm and the microcosm reflect each other. As above, so below. As without, so within. The universe doesn't operate according to one set of laws, while human life operates according to another. There's one set of laws, one set of rhythms, one great spiral of becoming that includes galaxies and atoms and everything in between, including you. This is why the New Year ritual, when approached consciously, is so much more than a party. It's a recognition of your participation in cosmic order. It's a moment to pause at the turning point and ask, am I ascending this spiral consciously, or am I just being carried by momentum? Am I learning from each cycle, or am I repeating the same patterns at the same level? Am I releasing what needs to die, or am I dragging corpses into my future? Am I planting intentions that align with my authentic nature, or am I planting seeds someone else told me I should want? The ancient year-end rituals weren't about making yourself better according to some external standard. They were about becoming more yourself, more aligned, more awake to the truth of your own being. The Sanskrit word dharma captures this beautifully. It's often translated as duty or righteousness, but its deeper meaning is closer to essential nature, or the unique way you're meant to unfold. Your dharma isn't something imposed on you from outside. It's something that emerges from within when you're aligned with your deepest truth. The New Year ritual done consciously is a dharma alignment practice. You're not trying to be someone else. You're trying to be more purely, more completely, more courageously yourself. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more authentic you become, the more you naturally contribute to the collective. The more you align with your own inner seasons, the more you find yourself in sync with opportunities and people and circumstances that support your growth. The more you honor your own cycles, the more you respect the cycles of others. The spiral of individual becoming and the spiral of collective evolution aren't separate. They're nested, intertwined, reflecting each other at every scale. So when the clock counts down to midnight on December 31st and everyone around you is celebrating, you can celebrate too. But you'll know what you're really celebrating. Not an arbitrary calendar change, not an excuse to drink champagne, but a cosmic threshold, a turning point on the spiral, an opportunity to release what the last orbit taught you to release and to plant intentions for where the next orbit might carry you. You're participating in humanity's oldest ritual, the recognition that time is sacred, that cycles are real and that you are not a separate self struggling alone, but a node of consciousness in an intelligent, responsive, cyclical universe that wants you to thrive. Here's where it gets truly strange, where the practical wisdom we've explored opens into something that challenges the very foundation of how we think about time and selfhood. Every culture that developed sophisticated year-end rituals shared a peculiar belief. They didn't think they were just symbolically marking a transition. They believed the threshold between years was an actual opening, a moment when the veil between different states of reality grew thin. The Celts believed the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of ancestors became permeable at Samhain. The Romans thought the god Janus, with his two faces looking simultaneously backward and forward, literally presided over doorways in time. The Mayans understood their calendar not as a measurement system, but as a map of consciousness moving through different qualities of time. What if they weren't speaking metaphorically? What if the reason year-end rituals feel powerful isn't just psychological placebo, but because something about the collective human consciousness focusing on a threshold actually creates one? Modern physics has discovered something unsettling about the nature of time. Einstein's relativity proved that time isn't a universal constant flowing at the same rate everywhere. It's relative, flexible, affected by gravity and velocity. Quantum mechanics went further, suggesting that at the smallest scales, cause and effect become murky. Particles can be entangled across space, affecting each other instantaneously. Some interpretations suggest the future might influence the past, just as much as the past influences the future. The universe starts to look less like a mechanical clock and more like a vast web of interconnected moments, all somehow present simultaneously. Now consider this. When millions of humans simultaneously perform rituals of release and intention at the year's turning, focusing their consciousness on letting go of one cycle and calling in another, what are they actually doing? They're creating a massive coherence in the collective field of human consciousness. They're synchronizing their internal cycles with an external marker, And if consciousness isn't just a byproduct of brain chemistry, but something fundamental to reality itself, as quantum pioneers like Max Planck and more recently Roger Penrose have suggested, then this collective focusing of intention might actually be doing something. The ancient mystery schools taught that time isn't linear but spiral, and they took this quite literally. They believed you don't just move forward through time, you move through expanding rings of experience that cycle back to similar themes at higher levels of understanding. The Greek word for time, kairos, didn't mean chronological time. Chronos covered that. Kairos meant the right time, the opportune moment, the quality of time. They understood that not all moments are equal. Some moments are doorways, some moments are seeds, some moments are harvests. What if the reason the same challenges keep appearing in your life year after year isn't because you're failing to escape them, but because you're spiraling upward through them, being offered the chance to master at a new level what you only partially understood before? What if your future self, having already navigated 2026, is somehow reaching back through the spiral to help guide your present self and the intuitions you feel, the synchronicities you notice, the dreams that seem prophetic? What if they're not predictions but memories traveling backward through time? This isn't science fiction. This is what the spiral model of time actually implies. If you never occupy the same point in space twice, if every return is actually an arrival somewhere new, then causation itself might be more complex than we've imagined. The mystics said the ending and the beginning are one. What if they meant this literally? What if the person you're becoming in 2026 is already real in some dimension, and the work of transformation is actually a process of alignment, of tuning your frequency to match a version of yourself that already exists in potential? The Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, takes on new meaning here. The cosmos spirals, galaxies spiral, DNA spirals, time spirals, consciousness spirals. It's the same pattern at every scale, the same geometry of evolution encoded into the structure of existence itself. When you stand at the threshold of a new year and consciously engage with release and intention, you're not just performing a psychological exercise. You're aligning yourself with the fundamental pattern through which reality evolves. If this is true, if time is spiral rather than linear, if consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, if your intentions at threshold moments actually shape the trajectory of your unfoldment, then the responsibility becomes immense and the opportunity becomes infinite. You cannot sleepwalk into 2026. You cannot treat January 1st as just another day, another hangover, another broken promise to yourself. The threshold demands consciousness. It demands honesty. It demands that you look at who you've been in 2025 without flinching and ask whether that's who you want to continue being at the next level of the spiral. Every choice you make in these transition days is amplified, not because magic happens at midnight, but because you're setting the initial trajectory for your next orbit. A rocket doesn't need to course correct much if it launches in the right direction, but a fraction of a degree off at launch, and by the time you're halfway to your destination, you're millions of miles away from where you intended to go. The intentions you set now, the releases you perform now, the consciousness you bring to this threshold, these determine the initial direction of your spiral for the next cycle. This is why ancient cultures took year-end rituals so seriously. This is why they fasted, why they performed ceremonies, why they gathered in community. They understood that threshold moments are dangerous in the original sense of that word, full of power, requiring respect, demanding attention. You can cross a threshold unconsciously and be carried by momentum into more of the same. Or you can cross it awake, aware, intentional, and bend the trajectory of your life toward evolution. But here's the responsibility that comes with this knowledge. You can't blame circumstances anymore. You can't say life just happens to you. If you're a conscious participant in a spiral of becoming, if your intentions at threshold moments genuinely shape what emerges, then you're no longer a victim of your life. You're a co-creator of it. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus taught that you can't control external events, but you can control your responses, and your responses determine your character, and your character determines your fate. It's not that you create your reality through wishful thinking. It's that you shape your reality through the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment, especially the threshold moments. The difficult truth is this. If you enter 2026 carrying the same unprocessed pain from 2025, the same unexamined fears, the same habitual patterns of self-sabotage, you'll create more of the same at the next level of the spiral. The circumstances will look different, the details will vary, but the underlying pattern will repeat, because you're still operating from the same consciousness that created the pattern in the first place. Einstein again, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. This is why the release phase of the year-end ritual is so crucial. You're not just cleaning house, you're changing the frequency you're broadcasting. You're shifting the attractor field that determines what you draw into your life. The quantum physicists talk about wave function collapse, the moment when infinite possibilities crystallize into one actuality. Your consciousness is constantly collapsing wave functions, constantly selecting which of infinite potential futures becomes real. And you select based on your habitual patterns of thought, emotion, belief, and action. Change the pattern, change what manifests. It's not mystical, it's mechanical in a sense. The universe responds to the signal you're transmitting. So the question becomes practical and immediate. What signal are you transmitting as you cross this threshold? Are you broadcasting fear or trust, scarcity or abundance, victimhood or agency, resistance or flow? The universe doesn't judge these signals, it simply responds to them. It's like tuning a radio. You get the station you're tuned to, not the station you wish you could hear. If you want to experience a different reality in 2026, you need to tune to a different frequency. And threshold moments are when the dial is easiest to turn. The mystics called this metanoia, a Greek word often translated as repentance, but actually meaning something closer to a fundamental shift in consciousness. It's not about feeling guilty for past mistakes. It's about waking up to a new way of perceiving, a new way of being. The Buddha called it enlightenment. The Gnostics called it gnosis. Jesus called it being born again. Different traditions, same recognition. Transformation isn't gradual improvement. It's a leap to a new level of the spiral. And leap moments often happen at thresholds. Here's what this means practically as you stand on the edge of 2026. You have a choice that you make right now in these days that will echo through the entire year ahead. You can bring the same level of consciousness to the new year that you brought to the old year, in which case you'll get refined versions of the same experiences, the same challenges, the same lessons. Or you can make a conscious leap, can choose to see differently, think differently, respond differently, and open yourself to genuinely new possibilities that weren't accessible at your previous level of consciousness. The alchemists had a phrase for this: solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. You have to dissolve the old form before you can coagulate into a new one. You have to die to who you were to be born as who you're becoming. And this isn't metaphorical death. It's the death of identification with patterns that no longer serve you. The death of the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. The death of the comfortable prison of your current limitations. This is uncomfortable. This is why most people avoid it. It's easier to make surface-level resolutions that don't require fundamental change. It's easier to stay in the known suffering of your current patterns than to risk the unknown territory of transformation. But the spiral doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your evolution, and evolution requires that you repeatedly die to what you were and be born into what you're becoming. The year-end threshold is offering you the opportunity to do this consciously, rather than having life force it on you through crisis. The ancient wisdom traditions ultimately agreed on something profound. The journey of consciousness is a return home to what you've always been, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the masks of personality, beneath the stories of separation. The Hindu concept of moksha, liberation, isn't about going somewhere new. It's about recognizing what's always been true. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." The mystics weren't being poetic. They were being precise. If consciousness is fundamental, if the universe is a vast interconnected field of awareness experiencing itself through temporary forms, then you're not a separate self struggling to survive in an indifferent cosmos. You're a focal point of cosmic consciousness, temporarily convinced of your own separation, going through cycles of forgetting and remembering, descent and ascent, death and rebirth. The spiral isn't moving you away from home. It's moving you deeper into the recognition of what home actually is. This is what makes the New Year threshold so sacred. It's a moment of collective remembering. Millions of humans, across cultures and continents, simultaneously pausing to acknowledge that time is more than mechanical repetition, that cycles are real, that consciousness matters, That intention has power, that we're all participating in something vast and mysterious and meaningful. For one moment, the human species remembers it's not separate fragments competing for resources, but a single organism of consciousness evolving through experience. The Hermetic tradition taught, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Perhaps the entire cosmos isn't something you're inside of, moving through as a separate entity. Perhaps you're what the cosmos is inside of, what it's made of, the very substance of existence experiencing itself from one particular angle, one temporary vantage point in the infinite spiral of becoming. So here's the final question, the one that never really gets answered but always leads somewhere deeper. If you are consciousness having a temporary human experience, if your individual spiral of growth is nested within and reflecting the cosmic spiral of evolution, if every ending is simultaneously a beginning and every threshold is an opportunity for transformation, then who or what is standing at the edge of 2026 right now, reading these words, contemplating these mysteries? Are you the personality with its fears and desires and history? Are you the body that will age and die? Are you the mind with its stories and beliefs? Or are you the awareness in which all of these appear, the space in which experience unfolds, the eternal witness watching the spiral turn, the one constant in the midst of all change? The mystics said the answer to this question can't be thought. It can only be known through direct experience. And threshold moments approached with consciousness are doorways to that experience. As 2026 begins, you have the opportunity not just to set new goals, but to inquire into the nature of who's setting them, not just to release old patterns, but to discover what remains when all patterns fall away. Not just to spiral upward, but to recognize yourself as the spiral itself, the movement and the mover, the journey and the destination, the question and the answer. If these ideas resonate with something in you, if they're awakening a memory of truths you've always known but temporarily forgotten, then perhaps consider this: the exploration of consciousness, the investigation of reality, the spiral of awakening. These aren't solitary journeys. We're all in this together, reflecting each other, challenging each other, reminding each other of what we came here to remember. This channel is dedicated to exploring these mysteries, not as destinations to reach, but as territories to wander through with curiosity and wonder. The new year isn't an ending or a beginning. It's a threshold in an endless spiral, an invitation to wake up a little more, to remember a little deeper, to align a little closer with the cosmic rhythm that's been moving through you since before you were born, and will continue long after this particular form dissolves back into the ocean from which it emerged. The ancient traditions that created year-end rituals knew something we're only now beginning to rediscover: that time is sacred, that consciousness is creative, that cycles are real, and that you are not a powerless speck in an uncaring universe, but a necessary thread in the fabric of existence itself, evolving through experience, ascending the spiral, returning home. So as the countdown begins and the clock moves toward midnight, as one year releases into the next, as you stand at the threshold between what was and what might be, ask yourself, am I crossing this threshold asleep or awake? Am I being carried by momentum or choosing my direction? Am I repeating the pattern or evolving it? Am I remembering who I really am, or am I still lost in the dream of separation? The spiral turns, the cycle completes and begins anew. And you, infinite consciousness in temporary human form, get to choose how consciously you participate in the eternal dance of becoming. The hunt for truth continues, spiraling ever upward, forever approaching and never quite arriving at the mystery that you already are.